So, greetings from Raleigh, North Carolina. Just a few days ago, the Republic of Ireland elected a new president, Catherine Connolly. Um, and it's interesting because I guess you have some folks who have noticed that her politics are fairly to the left, which isn't going to be a problem for me. But obviously, not everyone is like me. Um, but that's not exactly why I'm making this video. Um, I think probably the reason why I'm making this video um, is because I think a distinction needs to be made. Now, what you tend to have with states of power is something known as a head of state and something known as head of government. Oftentimes you'll hear head of state getting the big billing, you know. So what exactly is a head of state? A head of state is a public official. Um, a public official that is basically considered the sovereign, or at least the face of a sovereign state. So it's a public official that is the face of a public state. Now, what is a head of government? A head of government is an official that is basically in charge of leading the government. Perhaps whether it be wielding executive power, whether it be wielding legislative power, or at least in charge of that particular body. So, Catherine Connolly is going to be president of Ireland. Now, that means in Ireland, the position of president is one that is head of state, but not head of government. In Ireland, the president is largely a ceremonial role. They convene, dissolve parliament, sign official bills, but there is no executive power, and there certainly is no legislative power. That the president of Ireland is excluded from the government process, the process of running the government. Now, the head of government in Ireland, there's a couple names. I guess if you're not in Ireland, you're likely to just say prime minister. If you're from Ireland, you're likely to use a term that they've been using for decades, Taoiseach. If you look at it, it doesn't look anything like that. Taoiseach. Apparently, it's pronounced Taoiseach. At least that's one, if you will, particular pronunciation. And Taoiseach, if you will, they wield government power. They do any vetoing or, anything like that. Now, what's also interesting is that they do have a check. And the check is that the president has there's several checks, but the president has a 7-year term and can be renewed twice. All right. You know what? You might not see, if you will, a Tasha in charge for 7 years because obviously they go by party, right? If you have a certain amount of seats in Parliament in your particular party, then, and if you have the majority, if you will, of those seats, you will wield power. And this could change. You know, you could have it where basically you're Tasha for 1 year, Tasha for 2 years. You could very well see that, and you could very well have a president that's um, over several Tashas. You could have one, if you will, Tasha term, or one president term that could equal, I don't know, possibly maybe 7, if not more, Tashas. I believe, and I'll run a correction if I'm wrong on this, but I have a feeling that they could probably run snap elections, if you will, in Ireland. Now, here in the United States, or let's go to the UK. In the UK, the head of state, if you will, that goes to the monarchy. And so that is, if you will, at the moment, Charles III, King Charles III. Now, with that being said, the head of state in England or the UK doesn't have real governmental authority. And that belongs to the Prime Minister, who is head of government. You may be aware that King Charles is king in several, if you will, countries, independent countries, one of them being Canada. And so the head of state is, if you will, okay, well, it's the monarch, but the monarch is represented by a governor general. And that's largely, if you will, a ceremonial position. And the head of government in Canada, if you will, is the prime minister. Now, what about here in the United States? Well, here in the United States, the head of state is indeed who you think it is. It's the president. It's the president, if you will, of the United States. He is considered, if you will, the official face, if you will, of the sovereign state of the United States of America. And you already knew that. Now, who's head of government? Now, you may see some sites tell you that the head of government is the president of the United States. That's tricky. You are likely aware of something that Montesquieu of France had brought up. The idea of the separation of powers. And of course, we definitely have separation of powers in the United States, where you essentially have, well, at least two, and I guess technically three, if you will, co-equal branches of government, right? You have the judicial branch, or let's just go by the Constitution. The legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Now, the President of the United States, if you will, is head of government in the executive branch, but isn't, or at least shouldn't be, head of government legislatively. I would say that belongs to Congress. And obviously the Supreme Court, if you will, is head, if you will, of the judicial branch of the government. So it can get, if you will, a little complicated. But I figured I'd bring that up because I know oftentimes we talk about head of state, but oftentimes we don't bring up, if you will, head of government. And in many places, obviously, in many places, the head of government and the head of state are not necessarily, if you will, the same person. And if you're talking about the person who wields government power, that's going to be, if you will, the head of government. All right. Anyway, that's all I want to bring up. Take care and goodbye.